Imperial Holdings, of course, is an industrial services and retail group. It closed with a market cap today of 34 billion rand, so bigger than Barloworld. Mahindra and Mahindra South Africa has taken over the distribution of SsangYong vehicles in Southern Africa. That's from the Imperial Group this week. That contract with the Korean maker expired at the end of March. Gerbrand, your views on Imperial are very much geared towards the automotive sector in South Africa. So starting with that view, how's that side of the business been performing?
Yeah, look, I think their balance sheet, etc., looks much better than it did in the past when Equestria was part of them, etc. So it's also a cyclical business, retail in South Africa, logistics in Southern Africa, and logistics in Europe. So it's a bit more diversified from a global footprint point of view in currency hedging, etc., from the revenue base, but especially with the recent acquisition that they did as well. I think it's a European Lenker Group who they bought for 2.8 billion rand, which should, as they said in trading statement, add about 100 million to the bottom line, which looks a bit thin, and maybe there's some other synergies there. But yep. Difficult industry, low margins, cyclical once again, and
low margins, lower than Barloworld. Operating profit margin sitting at 6.8%. Barlow's just under 10%. What are your thoughts on that acquisition, that Lenkering acquisition, what it means for the exposure into emerging markets is what they're saying it will give them?
I quite like this one. I mean, I know Hubert Brody, the CEO, personally, and he's a very clever and committed guy. The business is interesting because it grew during the 1990s and before under the managership of Bill Lynch, who basically came in one of those top professional managers. But in an expanding economy, he just basically bought everything that he thought looked quite attractive and thought he would work out afterwards how to kind of build the synergies. So they, amongst the businesses that they still have, they also had the SAF Air, you know, freight servicing and logistics aircraft and that leasing business. And then they had the business that's now in Extra, which is the old MCC business, a mining contract equipment business. So when Hubert took over, they were in dire straits. First of all, Bill Lynch died unexpectedly of cancer, which was a great tragedy. Then the global crisis hit, and you know, the share price basically went from 180 Rand a share in 2008 down to about 40. So we were all left wondering what on earth was going to happen here and whether the group was basically just going to disintegrate. But it didn't. Hubert came in, they stabilized the management, they sold off some of the divisions that they thought were too capital intensive or too low margin, being the SAF Air flight type thing. So I think what you're left with is quite a well balanced industrial group with quite a strong logistics emphasis, and then there's got the motor retail in there, and that's fine. It's got tourism and free leasing and all sorts of other stuff. But I think
tourism is a worry. It has highlighted that as a worry.
Yeah.
One part of the
Although
business
it's an industry that we've got to do better in as a nation, and I think it will become something that, you know, picks up steam because we're a credible tourist destination and all that. So I think actually Hubert is quite sensible, and I think what he's going to do is look around for another deal that I know they keep looking at and talking to Bidvest, which has also got similar assets, and that is potentially interesting. And then the kind of businesses they've been buying in Europe and so on, I think are quite well selected. So at 30 billion, it's been through the wars, it's paid its school fees, it's got a talented management team. I think you can do a lot worse than look at this one.
Certainly has been in a big marketing drive recently. If you're just driving around Gauteng, lots of Imperial boards everywhere you look. Do you think that we're going to start seeing further acquisitions, further expansion of the group? They highlight the fact that their gearing ratio is below the 60% level, and they're looking at a target between 60 and 80%, which leaves room for expansion.
Look, I think it leaves room for about 1% in that, the 60 or the bottom end of the target range. But certainly, they're not doing badly on the return on equity, etc. That's around 19–20% over the last 2–3 years. So they certainly has been doing the right things at the company. We know that they've acquired recently the Bobcat license as well, locally. So they are still in an acquisitive nature, like the old Bill Lynch was. They're continuing some of that, and as you said, there might be some scope for further transactions. But certainly, I would be a bit cautious at where markets are worldwide to do transactions at these price levels.
Unless you can get it for a really good price.
Well, that's the problem. Maybe 3 years back were a bit better time, but their balance sheet weren't then in order.
1 year return 40% for the stock. Year to date 20%, 161 Rand, hot or not?
Yeah, I think it's fully priced as well, to be honest. At 100 Rand, it looked attractive about 3-4 months back. It's rallied hard, 160 Rand. We don't like technicals much. We don't care about technicals, but certainly at a 12.5 PE, I think it's in line fair value where it should be, and especially at this stage of the market. It is cyclical as well, don't forget that. There's consumers involved there, there's companies involved there.
Fully priced for you or hot at 160 or odd Rand?
No, the way we go about life in the markets is we're trying to find transformative investments, companies that can double their earnings and, you know, really grow in a secular way through the cycles. So I know I might be sticking my head out here, but I think at 46 or 47, Hubert Brody, the CEO, wants to make his mark. He's not comfortable just running the business. I think it is potentially one to put into the portfolio. So
and
I'll go with hot.
Highlighting the fact that they have room for further expansion. When you see that, you've got to also, keep your eye out for what's taking place from a strategic level.